Okay, it is 4:32 on Thursday, July 25th. I call this meeting of the Meridian Historic Preservation Commission to order. Roll call. Blaine Johnston's here. Don Cronk.
Here.
Josh Everts. Missing. Jody Alt.
Present.
J.C. Neri.
Present.
Courtney McBride. Donna Lusigan.
Present.
Councilman Ty Palmer is not here. Adoption of the agenda.
Did your guys' screens go black just
No?
Mr. President,
Ms. Jones?
I
Or-
move, that's right, we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Cronk for adoption of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of May 23rd minutes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri.
if there weren't any changes or edits from everybody, I move that we approve as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Alt for approval of May 23rd minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of monthly financial statements.
This is an important one, sorry. So, went a little rogue on you guys. We were contacted really last minute with an inquiry about having a placement in the Idaho Association of Museums brochure, which they only publish like only every 3 years or something. And because we've kind of strengthened our partnership with the Meridian Historical Society, and we'd like people to know that their records exist, their collection exists, I reached out to Blaine and asked if that is something that HPC might do on behalf of the Historical Society. And he said to go ahead and do it. So sorry you didn't get to make that decision.
My bad.
But it is a nice listing and gesture, and it was only $75 to be in that document that's referenced by people throughout the state when they're doing heritage tourism in the state of Idaho. So I think our listing was pretty straightforward. It was pretty basic, and it didn't list hours or anything because it's all volunteer run. It's the society's name and that they're in the History Center. If and when that changes, we can always update it for additional prints later. That's a bigger one, I suppose.
So I see directional signage for Pine Street School, 205.
Yes, that was installed. It is
Okay.
on Pine Street now. It's right next to the Boys and Girls Club, so it's on the west side of Meridian Road, on the north side of Pine.
Okay. And that's just regular ACHD.
Yeah, that's
Sign.
their green ACHD sign, yeah.
Okay.
I have reached out to Trademark, actually twice now, to get the other signage design going. So that will hopefully begin shortly. I think all I need are some photo references from me, and then they can get some basic designs going, but I would like to set up a meeting eventually with some commissioners so they could weigh in, and then that way we have some commissioner input before it's brought to the whole commission. And Trademark usually drafts like 3 options, and then they, like how Josh has done with the logo, they can say, I really like this part of this, or this part of this, or you know what, number 3 is just the best, let's go for that. So they said think that they could get that done before October 1, but I said if it could always be pushed into your guys' next fiscal year if need be. You have other stuff that you could purchase if you needed or wanted to. But that would be $1,500, I think is what you guys approved. So keep that in mind. I'd prefer for it to be this fiscal year versus next, because next fiscal year you had more educational training opportunities that you were wanting to consider. So that's on the horizon.
Okay, when you get in hold of Trademark and you get some drafts, just reach out to me.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
I'll probably need to get you involved
Okay,
as they're drafting. I will reach out to you, Blaine. It
Okay.
might be easiest just with you and then sharing with the commission.
that'd work. With that, do we have a motion to approve the financial statement?
Mr. President. I
Ms.
move-
Alt.
I move that we accept the monthly financial statement.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Cronk for approval of the monthly financial statement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Historical Society and History Center update. Lila's not here, so Hillary's going to give us a brief update.
Very brief. Essentially, they are really short on staff for what has been last week and coming into the next week. Linda's trying to cover a couple of days. Robbie's wife is not doing well, so keep him in your thoughts. Lila is still traveling for her annual or semi-annual family reunion, and Betsy and David should be here on Thursdays. They were here today. And Carol, it isn't as regular as usual because she's got grandchildren here. So it's really Linda trying to cover as many days as possible. Betsy and David trying to cover some of Robbie's days also. And then Jody's been coming in and volunteering for them frequently as well. We are making progress on the Atlas book that Lila has referenced to you guys a couple of times, and hopefully we'll have a draft to share with you August meeting. And that's all I know about. I'm sure there are a lot more things that they've got going on.
That works for now. Okay, we will go on to new business. Welcome, new Commissioner Donna Lusigan. Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see, I am retired. I have one daughter, 3 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, 2 cats, and a partridge in a pear tree. I have a lot of hobbies that I'm exercising now that I'm retired. And guess that's it.
Well, welcome to HPC.
Thank you.
We are a little laid back, a little crazy at times. Our craziest person is not present presently. So, but I think we have a lot of fun, so welcome.
Thank you.
6B, discuss and establish working committees.
Yeah, this came up right before or around the May Historic Preservation Month event. And I'd talked to Blaine on a couple of occasions to kind of brainstorm what the commission or committees could include. Let me go, I think I included some notes from that. So here you can see we had talked about how some things that we'd like to be able to cover in committee meetings because they are more time intensive. When you guys meet here, you tend to want to stick to an hour, hour and a half. And there are a lot of topics that you have that warrant a much more in-depth discussion or demand a much more in-depth discussion sometimes. So the idea behind the committees is so that you guys can function more efficiently and also make progress on things more efficiently. Again, committees, all decisions still have to be made by the commission, but it gives you a platform to meet and discuss certain topics that you could then recommend action at the commission meeting. So the committees that I would recommend would be education. city initiatives and relations, and then regional/state initiatives and relations. And then thinking that it makes the most sense to have 3 committees, it also might make sense for some people, if not all people, to be on possibly 2 committees, so that there is a little bit of overlap. And also, since we have 3, if there were only 2 people on a committee and one person couldn't make it to a meeting, all of a sudden, you don't have a committee, you have 1 person. So hoping that that allows for a little more coverage, but I don't know what you guys think about that. So happy to discuss or make different changes. It's up to you guys. It's your potential.
Any thoughts before I put my 2 cents in? JC, you got something on your mind?
Patiently.
Go for it.
Mr. President, Commissioners, I think committees for this group are necessary. We seem to not make as much progress over the course of the year as potentially I think we'd like to. I know I pulled back out our strategic plan that we did with TAG, found it in my old files, and that's the nature of that monthly hour-long meeting, is it's just really hard. And I think if we had something that was scheduled on the calendar, and commissioners were coming out of it with assignments, we would be able to accomplish more in a shorter period of time, or just maybe stay more on task. I think these 3 are good. Although some of them, I don't necessarily know that a committee, it feels like maybe number 2 and number 3 are committee type things, but the history course and the historical society, kind of depending on what that looks like, I don't know if that's a committee or if that's just one person maybe who reports back. I don't know organizationally how that works, but I would be happy to sit on these. I think it needs to be more regular, maybe twice a month for an hour or 2, so that we're accomplishing, which I realize for some people's schedules, that's 3 meetings a month. So I know that that can be challenging too. So maybe we narrow that scope down and maybe only do 1 committee, and those people that have additional time in their calendars to take something on could. But not everybody feels like they have to. Not everybody's schedule availability is the same.
I agree with Ms. Neri, and I think that we can would probably get more work done if we are in some committees. And I don't think they have to meet for very long, just go over some quick ideas, and people on those committees can work independently, and then when they meet, just come together, do some quick brainstorming, and then at our next meeting, just have those as ongoing reports to the commission.
So, Mr. President,
Mr. Neri.
just as some food for thought for the commission, one of our commissions has a number of subcommittees. It's our Parks Commission, and what they do now, their meetings tend to be longer. So, recognizing that's a different level of commitment. So it's either more than 1 meeting or 1 long meeting. But what they do is they convene their meeting at 6 on their designated days. I think it's the 2nd Wednesday of the month, and they begin their meeting with the commission. They break up into their committees, meet with their committees for a period of time, and then reconvene back, report out of their committees back to the full commission, hold their regular meeting and complete that. Now then, their meeting takes 2 to 3 hours. So that's one method to do it. Again, obviously you can do a second day or a different day. We do have to notice them, so I mean, there is an issue with that. But other than that, you can certainly do it either way. Either do it as part of your regular meeting, anticipating that the meeting might take longer, or do it on a separate day. Or again, you can do it fairly ad hoc as long as we provide notice.
So do the committees have to be notified?
Yes.
Noticed?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. President, the way that the Arts Commission does their committees is that they saw the parks model and they liked that, but what ended up happening was that they had only 1 committee meet adjacent to their regular meeting, and then the other 2 had regular monthly meetings. So it was like a lunch meeting for one group, and it was an evening meeting on a Monday for another group. So there's some flexibility there. You don't have to make it a regular meeting either. It's just easier to schedule, and also for me to keep in mind when noticing, so I know what's coming up ahead. There have been some instances where the MAC committees have, on a Monday, they're like, okay, we're going to meet on Wednesday. So I have to notice it immediately. And if I'm ever not there, I'm just warning you that you still have to notice it 24 hours in advance.
I was just going to, how much
Sometimes
time do you
there's-
have to notice it?
Committee meetings are 24 hours, I believe, yeah.
How do you notice it? Does it,
Posting it the same way that I post your commission meetings.
okay,
So that is on the boards, the bulletin boards out here, and through the email subscription list.
okay, so it doesn't have to like go in the paper or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. President, I will also add another benefit to having regularly scheduled committee meetings is that if all else fails, you could cancel the meeting if you don't have an update or if people are still doing legwork on a certain project. There's no harm in having it planned and or having to reschedule it. That way you have got some time committed each month to know that you'll be meeting with your peers.
I still think that for us to get started, maybe have separate meetings away from our regular commission meetings. So, since I'm interested in the National Registry and trying to get that stuff done, I would take that on, but again, like I said, since we have to notify Hillary when we're going to meet, if we have, let's say 2 and 3 as our committees, whoever heads up 2, again, just notify Hillary. But since I want to get this done, I don't know that it's priority. We have to make a decision tonight on it. We can talk about it, we can think about it for the month, and then Hillary, we could just do this as old business for next month, and then you guys brainstorm a little bit, and then let's see if we can't make a decision next month as to what we want to do.
For me, this Historical Society partnership would be good for me because we're trying to do that with the library anyway. And I'm already on a committee at the library for that, so that just makes sense. But other than that, I don't know.
Well, and I'm actually part of 2 of them, being on the city planning and working with the Historical Society. So if they sit this way, I'm already on 2.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them already make some sense.
Yep. You look confused, Donna.
Well, I would be willing to serve on the city initiatives and relations. I don't know much about it. I don't know, like, can you give me an idea of what a committee actually does in this case?
I think right now, if we, let's just cover planning department, and I get noticed through emails of upcoming projects that are coming through the city, whether conditional use permits or whatever. Since we have wanted we've been photographing old barns, stuff like that. So we've gone around and we'll look at properties, and if we feel that there's something on a property that's going to be developed that's worth photographing or documenting, then you'll see in here reports, current applications. Then we'll discuss that. So that's probably something that that subcommittee would do, is drive around, look at those properties. Is there a structure on that that's worthwhile? If I understand that correctly. So that would probably be one of the responsibilities. You could do that by yourself, and then the committee would come back and say, okay, this is coming up. We took a look at this. Yeah, there's a barn here that's probably worth getting photographs of to document what's there. Since we are not a regulatory commission and we cannot say yay or nay on what's coming through as an application, but we do want to try and preserve at least some of the history. The best way we can do that is by photographs. So that's my best explanation, whether it makes sense or not.
So a committee would meet, let's say, once a month, and they would go over whatever emails they've gotten that
Yep.
have to do with this stuff, these things listed here, and then they would decide what they think is the best, bring it back to the committee
Correct.
for this monthly meeting.
Yep,
And then propose whatever it is they're going to propose,
Right.
and then people would vote on it.
yeah, so talk to Hillary, because you can sign up for the city, and they'll send you emails daily on current applications. And there's a link to it, and you go through and look at the map, you can find out where it's at, what they're gonna do. Most of them are subdivisions, because they're taking up the farmland that's been around here, so, that's what I normally do, is I'll look at those applications and then scroll through, look at where's it at, and then Google Earth or whatever, look at it and see what's there. If it looks like there's something that may be interesting to the commission to preserve, or not preserve, that's the wrong word, but document, then we'll come back, bring that information back to the commission, say, yeah, there's a barn there. It's probably worth someone going out and taking a picture of it, so we have documentation of what was there.
And then for these 2 or 3 committees, there are committee chairpersons or whatever.
Yes. And that would be up to the committee as to elect who's committee chair.
And are these committees already in existence, or are we
No.
talking about setting them
We're
up?
going to set them up. So it's something new that the commission's going to start doing.
Yeah, I would be willing to help out on number 2.
Okay.
Mr. President, one thing I want to add to number 2 in particular is strengthening that relationship between HPC and the planning department in general. So going even beyond the transmittals, but making sure that planning's more aware of us, and that possibly we have a presence at planning and zoning meetings if or when needed, or keeping those communication channels open. We'll probably still need you, so we've already heard interest from Jody, I think JC and Donna on this internal city one, but we'd probably still want you to be probably actually sitting on every commission. That way when like decisions, or when the commission makes a decision, you can say, hey, planning, we've talked about this in a committee with you guys, with the commission, this is the direction I'd like to go, this is what we're proposing to planning and zoning. That way you can be informed on all of them, but you might not have to necessarily be attending every meeting, but you'd be receiving all of the agendas and whatnot. But making sure that that connection to the planning department is even stronger, or growing that connection, I think could be a benefit to HPC as well. The more you're in their face, the more they'll think of you when things come up. That's kind of the way I see it.
And the second item on city initiatives is the comprehensive plan objectives. And I know we've been talking about conservation overlay districts. So that's something else we need to continue to work on with the city as they go through their comp plan. So again, let's think about that, and then in August, when we meet, we'll discuss this further and come up with assignments. We'll go on to item C, Hull Films Egger Black Cat Mint Farm Virtual Tour.
Yes, so it's July. I told you I'd bring this back to you in August. Mint is growing out there in Drew Egger's mint farm. So I want to check in with you and see if we could get an approval for not to exceed for Brandon to do a virtual tour of the mint farm. I believe that I added to that Dropbox folder for you guys the pictures that he went out there and took of some of that equipment before Drew got rid of it. But so he would essentially incorporate some of those. I think we narrowed it down to 10 of those. Drew Eggers has a video that he already paid for and produced and said that we could link to in the virtual tour. So essentially, he would be building that background component. That's those 360 shots. Because you guys wanted to have the mint in the field and not the dirt from January in the field. The last one, I believe it wasn't $2,000 to do it. I think it was $2,500 to do 2 virtual tours of the last one. But I don't know how much more work Brandon might have to do, and if there's anything that Drew has that he wants photographs of, like archival documents or something. I'm just trying to cover all of our bases. And if Brandon can take the pictures, they're going to be higher quality pictures than myself or than Drew taking, scanning a document that he might have. And Brandon will know how to treat also. So my suggestion was a not to exceed of 2,000. I don't think it'll go that high. I think it would be closer to 16 at the highest, but just in case something else came up. Let me pull up the old one so that you can see it. Okay, do you guys remember?
Mm-hmm.
So Donna, I don't know if you've seen these yet, but essentially Brandon Hull creates basically like a virtual environment with photographs, and then we can add artifacts and narrative to that overall environment. You can minimize the text so you can see the whole picture. Just a number of things. You can add multiple pictures on a certain site. You can expand this. Then this arrow takes you to Pine Street School. Pick up the interior. And see a number of artifacts in here as well. And this is another full 360 environment. Oh, that's how you do. Anyway, that's what we're looking at. Let me go back to this.
He does really nice work, so yeah, I think it's worth,
The two sites before were 2,500, like I.
Mr. President?
Ms. Neri.
Mike's off. If there's not any other discussion on it, then I would move to approve a not to exceed of 2,000 for a virtual tour of, with whole film for Eggers Black Cat Mint Farm.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Neri, seconded by Commissioner Alt for expenditures not to exceed $2,000 for Whole Films virtual tour of Eggers Black Cat Mint Farm. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Sorry, but fast, Mr. President. Did everybody see the story that he's retiring?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the timing on this is
Yeah.
kind of nice. Is he keeping that property or,
He's leasing the property.
okay.
So it will still be farmed for the next few years at least. I think that the lease he has, it's not just a 1-year term. I had asked him if it was still going to be mint. So obviously it's going to be harvested, the mint's going to be harvested from this other group. But he didn't verify at the time if they were going to continue growing mint.
Do we know when he harvests?
I think it's late August or early September.
Because it would be nice if we could get some photographs of that process, the distilling process. And I don't know if we can or not.
Mr. President.
Neri.
So I've been there a few times. Most of the distilling is done in August, so the harvesting is probably going on now.
Okay.
And well through August. But yeah, they run those stills through August. I mean, they run them 24 hours a day. And I don't know how far in the entire month of August, but, so this is very timely to do it now.
It might be interesting. I'll ask Brandon and Drew. Maybe Brandon could even get pictures, something involved with the distilling process as well. That's what the majority of it goes into, right, is the oil itself, so that it can go into toothpaste or whatever else.
Mhm.
It's not packaging mint to sell at grocery stores.
Right.
I can follow up on that, because those kind of action shot photos might be nice to include.
Exactly. Thank you. Item D, County Treasurer Award.
I think it was Ms. Neri that commented that I don't think the Pine Street School had been awarded a County Treasurer Award. I think that it still qualifies. I know they did major renovations in, 93? Yeah, of course. the bones of it are still there from before 50 years ago. It says that they did have a preference for unincorporated Ada County. But I haven't looked into those particular sites. Do you guys have other suggestions beyond Pine Street School?
I think Pine Tree School is an excellent suggestion.
I was surprised how many Meridian properties there were on there, actually. The Neal House was listed previously.
Mr. President,
Missionary.
this application, I think it's due tomorrow. I'm wondering, I don't remember how intense that application is. Is that something that we can turn around in a day? And is there a fee for this one? Is it one of those pay-to-play things?
I don't think that there's a fee. Let me double check.
I remember there being a $20 or $25 fee for an application, but I might be thinking of the Orchid one and not this.
Because the Orchid.
Might be the Orchid. But if they do it for the Orchid, maybe there might be something for this. Different groups, but.
I don't even remember. So the form that Brent had sent along was really just the Excel list that had other previous structures. So they might not even be looking for a formal
We just tell them
form.
the name and.
Yeah, my assumption was that they just wanted a list of properties that they could then investigate independently. But I will, let me see what else I can do on that. Did anyone else have other thoughts? Properties? You could probably recommend or nominate more than one if you wanted to.
Did you say it was, they were looking for unincorporated, like,
Preference was unincorporated.
what about the Eggers Farm then? I mean, if they're doing I realized so in the day, in the time of just turning it around, if we don't have to do anything but suggest names and they're gonna take the burden upon researching the property themselves, it seems like we should throw a couple out because we're not, it doesn't hurt us to do anything by suggesting, and that might be a good timely one, considering that might be a good time capsule of what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm not finding the form of any kind. So I'm happy to send over any and all properties that you guys want to suggest.
I would say the Eggers Mint Farm and Pine Tree School. You get those two, then Missionary's right. If they're doing the legwork, then we just need to give them a couple names.
Jody, did you have other properties out south of, like South Meridian, that may still be unincorporated also? I remember you mentioning some farms or farmhouses out there.
I don't know how old Jackson's is or Hanson's. Both of those are out in that area. I would imagine Hanson's will be demolished here real soon. Mr. President, my
Resolve.
question too is, can we put in the Masonic Hall?
Yeah?
Through my research, it was built in 1955, so it's over 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that one's another one on the list we need to investigate for national listing. So, but we need to get some more information on that one.
Yes, I have found some information on it for you.
Okay?
We need a formal motion on those, or is the suggestion enough?
I think that if there's not a formal fee or form associated with it, those suggestions are fine. I'll look into Jackson's and Hanson's a little bit more, but I'll suggest all of them.
Okay. Historic Preservation Plan.
So as alluded to earlier in this meeting, your plan is something that we don't pull up to the forefront on every single meeting, but it still exists, and it was originally created and approved with the intention of lasting through 2019, although I didn't see anything that said that it had to expire, but I think if you're honoring the intent of the plan, it was intended as a 5-year plan. So you guys would be looking at reviewing that current plan and possibly suggesting updates for the commission to consider. This would be a great committee task. But I think that you may also want to have a special meeting to address this in more length as a group, so you're not excluding anybody that isn't in that committee and not allowing them the time to voice their opinions. So I think the bulk of it would end up staying the same. We can go back through and update any possible changes to regulations, programs, and management. There has been some national changes that we might need to reference in here that have been updated. And the history is the same. And then it gets into our sites inventory that just explains how those are listed. We would most likely request an updated list from them and incorporate any of our known updates. And then the goals and objectives is where I really see the bulk of the work that needs to be done by a committee and the commission. So it's really looking at, have you accomplished this? Is it something that you're able to actively work towards? I think your bandwidth is something you need to keep in mind as you're looking at these. And then it might be nice, some of the committees have been adding to their individual plans the level of priority, like if something's a high priority or a low priority, or even adding FY or fiscal year deadlines. So if they want to accomplish something by a certain day, if it's something that's not going to be a continuous thing, or if it's a certain goal, like if you want to add 3 more National Registry listings by X day, you could do that. And that way it helps keep you accountable for your tasks as well. So you don't have to keep this format, although I think it has served you well. But it will take time to go through each of these goals and objectives.
Do you, or can you find out what it cost us to have TAG?
Well, I don't think TAG is going to modify your goals and objectives.
No.
That has to be you guys.
And I don't know if they're the one that did the finished product. We can go through and modify this as a commission, but does this have to come out of a third party?
Mr. President?
Ms. Neri?
So I think we purchased it originally, and maybe it's just as simple as looping back with TAG and asking if we can edit their file and just getting that permission to do that. I mean, it was just shy of $2,500 when we did it originally. And I know we could pull that invoice, but I remember it took up our entire consulting budget for that fiscal year, so it would have
Right.
been right about that. My assumption, obviously, without talking to TAG, is that they expect, they know that that's what the goal of this is that we would take it and update it each year. And I think from going through it, like I said, I went through and I reread this, most of this still applies because they're active goals that we either haven't accomplished, haven't been able to really spend the time on, and might be just kind of a good focus of really where we take our subcommittees. It fits in pretty nicely. It just needs to be, I think, updated with current regulations and things like that. Like, I mean, our goal of registry, finding properties put to the registry, that's still a thing, right? So I think it might be easier to update it than we anticipate. Maybe that's a good take-home assignment for August, is just that everybody read it, and we can simply highlight what is in this plan is still applies, and maybe it's not very challenging to update.
Previous cost was $2,500. I agree with Ms. Neri. Assigning this, I can print out copies for those committee members and for everyone, and then the committee can really dig into it, come back with suggestions, merge those suggestions with those of the other commissioners, and just provide updates. You don't have to tear it apart and rebuild.
I know I've got a copy of it. Can you just send it out? I think it's a PDF.
Yeah. It's on our website also.
Okay.
If you want me to send you a link to it.
That'd probably be easier for most people. That way they don't have to thumb through it. Yeah, if we can send a link to it, then read through it.
Since you don't have committees yet, are there possibly 2 or 3 people that want to meet between now and the next meeting to talk about this?
We can do that.
I can.
For me, it's a matter of when we meet.
Okay, well, I'll start with Dawn, JC, and Jody, and go from there.
Okay.
Lane, you and I might just want to have our own meeting to
Yeah.
go through it. And I will send a link out to everybody tomorrow then. Nice looking plan, though.
We'll go on to old business, logo discussion.
So Josh could probably share more information as far as why these were designed, how they were designed, but essentially you guys, I think he just wants you to kind of determine which you prefer. If you just like one and you're happy with it, then you could say, let's select that. But if there's still more work you want done, then I'm sure he'd be open to reworking these if you'd like them to be reworked. So here's the first one. Here's the second. I remember hearing a lot of positive feedback on the second one last time.
The first one on the lettering, it's just kind of real busy. And it's a lot bigger than the actual bell.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I don't like about it.
Do you like the second
do.
one? Okay. Without modifications?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the second one. I think it's a little bit cleaner.
Translates to marketing materials nicely too, like the coin,
Mm-hmm.
and shirts, and it's an easier logo to probably place on existing materials too.
I think that you do vinyl decals.
Yep.
Mr. President,
That's all.
I move that we adopt logo number 2 as our logo.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Neri to adopt logo number 2 as the official Meridian HPC logo.
Mr. President,
Mr.
may I just ask a
Neri.
question? For reproduction purposes and such, is the desire of the commission that it remain black and white? Or is color not relevant for reproduction? I agree, I think it's easier for reproducing on letterhead or whatever other things that you have. I just want to know, is the desire that it remain black and white or something else?
Could use the city color, I could ask anyway, about using the city colors and changing it out as the city blue, the city yellow, for when that might be appropriate.
Yeah, I was just curious if that was part of your decision point, that's all I was wondering.
I don't think the color matters. for me personally.
I think if we had colors, it'd be really nice too. And going along with the city's colors would be optimal, I think, rather than just black and white.
Yeah, at least from a marketing standpoint, it stands out better. The Solid Waste Advisory Commission, I think there's some blues and greens. I think the Parks Commission also is similar. I think it has blues and greens. So blue certainly is a consistent theme for most of the city departments or logos that have a logo. I mean, fire is a little bit different, but that's fire. But the blue is certainly a consistent color palette for the city's logos.
If you guys are in favor of at least logo number 2, I can ask Josh for some color copy renditions of it, and then we could bring those back in August. If there is anything in the interim, would you guys mind me using the black logo?
No?
Okay.
No. And yeah, if we could see what it looks like in the Meridian blue, whatever blue color that is. Indigo blue, I don't know.
It's a soothing color.
Mm.
We have an active motion out there.
Cool. Do you want to hold off on your adoption of your logo motion, or move forward with that and say your?
I guess my 2 cents is I would like to adopt the logo and then have color options. I don't want to have to adopt that, we're going to adopt the logo and it can only be in blue. I think that's very limiting, so maybe this is the design and then we can use color as appropriate.
I agree.
I like the idea of color on some things, but there's also a case in which it's just expensive.
I agree.
So do we need to restate the motion that we use this logo, but color is optional?
Can I ask what this logo goes on?
We are thinking of, if we have an event, like during Preservation Month, we can have shirts made for the commission that would have this on it. We've got a banner that we put out front that says on a table, we can have that logo put on the banner. It has the city of Meridian, but it would also have our logo put on it. If we create swag for something, then it would go on.
The biggest thing that for me it would be helpful on is for marketing materials like flyers or possibly photos or slideshows that we have playing here, so that people are more familiar with who you are and what you're doing. It's just another branding identifier. You can include it on your presentations to City Council. You can include it on your letters of support for certain projects or for your National Register
Applications.
mentions. Yeah, so any letters that are signed by you guys, including those that are for property inquiries. So when we do see a property come through on a transmittal and then I send in a letter that says, hey, we're interested in taking photos of your property, you can include the HPC logo on there. It's already on letterhead. I'm not just sending a piece of paper, but it gives them something to identify you guys with as well.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Neri for approval of logo number 2 with optional colors.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before Mr. Neri says anything else. Okay, fine. Conservation overlay districts.
So we left the conservation overlay districts at, I believe that they need to be addressed with the Meridian Downtown Business Association. And then once we have that feedback, we can present something further to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Blaine has pulled research from other local and
Federal.
federal examples of conservation overlay districts. There's been more information shared about these recently through the national, what is it called? National Preservation, the people that do Pass Forward for us every year. Through their forum.
Uh-huh.
They've had other people that have shared their documents as well. So there's not a huge update on this other than, Blaine, I think you and I could get together. If you could tell me what you want me to bring to MDBA, I can share it. I have to go to those meetings anyway. Otherwise, you're welcome to go to a meeting as well. They are on the 4th Friday of every month. So there's one tomorrow, but we're not on that agenda. But essentially, once we get clearance from them, I think the next step is to talk to Planning and Zoning Commission,
Okay.
share a full concept with them, including if there's any differentiation between a pilot program and what it could look like going forward. So other communities have like an application process, so it puts the burden on the neighbor or the region, rather than you guys having to go out there and get signatures from residents or business owners. It kind of puts the burden on citizens to go through and get that. And again, it might just help them build their community. So we can talk through what makes the most sense.
Okay.
Having input from the business association, since that would be kind of the area that you're talking about,
Right.
would be helpful.
I'll give Donna a little update. Meridian City as a whole does not have neighborhoods like Boise do. They have their North End Historic District or the Warm Springs Historic District. In those districts, you have to have at least 50% of the homes be eligible for listing on the National List of Historic Places. Meridian does not have that. But we do have the Old Town. So from here north on Main Street, they're older homes, older buildings. What we want to try and create is an area where that scale of building is the same as what's there. And so right in the middle, for lack of a better location, let's say where Tammy's Tea House was. I don't know what's going in there now. We don't want someone to come in, buy that, tear that down, and put in a 3-story building because it doesn't fit the scale of that neighborhood. Through a conservation overlay district that would eventually go into the comprehensive plan, anything that would come through has to meet that criteria. So that's really basically the only way that we can, and I hate to use the word regulate, but that's what we're trying to do, is regulate what can go in. Like I said, we want to keep that scale, walkability, environment in those areas.
We have that power now.
We do not have that power now, so that's what we're trying to create, is these overlay districts. And it can not only be just for business areas, it can be for residential area. I know that there was a development plan for Cherry Lane out by the middle school. And the density was greater than what was around it. Luckily, planning, and I think neighbors voiced their opinion on it, said, no, that's too dense. We don't want that density of subdivision in here. So if I'm not mistaken, planning and zoning turned it down. They had to redesign. So that's what we're trying to create.
And would we then, once we get the overlays the way we want it, would we then go to the sitting planning and they would adopt that, or?
Yes. Yeah, so as a commission, we would say, okay, we're going to do Old Town first, or that's one. Pine Street going east would be another one that is of interest. Or if we, like I said, some of the subdivisions that were developed in the 60s around, and so they're not going to be very big areas, but that could become a conservation overlay district. So it'd be us, we would have to talk to the neighbors, we have to talk to those people and say, this is what we would like. We can't do anything without the buy-in from the people that live there. If they don't want it, then that's fine. But if they're in favor of doing that, then we can proceed.
And how do you do that? Do you canvass them, or do you
We'd have to canvass
mailings, or?
them. Yeah, we'd have to canvass them. We could probably set up a meeting with them. We'd have to send out mailers to them, say, this is what we would like to do. We're going to have a meeting on that at City Hall in a conference room or here in the chambers or whatever, so.
And how long how long have we been working on this?
3 months.
And what's your estimated time that you want to get it done?
When does the new comp plan become?
You don't have to, the comp plan already includes policy that addresses supporting HPC and other policies that you could refer to with this. We don't have anything to include in the comp plan that
Okay.
says conservation overlay districts, because that doesn't currently exist. So it's current draft of the comp plan is already out. So a change this significant is not going to be added at this point, although there are other policies that support this kind of
Okay,
process.
Mr. President, I think on top of that, I think this would be a good conversation with the city council. There's been kind of a mixed message from the council on whether that's something they want. I mean, the council has been supportive of historic preservation and documentation and those types of things to the level of regulatory types of ordinances. They haven't been as supportive of that. So I think before you invest a lot of time and resource into creating that, I would have that conversation with the council at one of their work sessions to see what level of interest they have. And again, we also have a new mayor and a new council that will be coming on board in January. And, you know, whether you have that discussion now, it may be a better discussion in January with the new mayor and council on board to see what their feelings are about those types of districts and what is the impact and what does that mean for the city. And, you know, really having some of the vetting about what it means and then having that conversation with planning and then coming to the council would probably be the steps I would suggest you consider in moving this forward. Just so there you can have a very robust discussion with the council over what would this mean, why would we choose to do this, what's the intent. You know, one of the challenges has always been, in my opinion, in our downtown and Old Town is historic preservation is challenging when you don't have a level of inventory to start with. And that's always been our challenge. A lot of the older cities around the state, whether it's Twin Falls or Pocatello or those that have done a lot of historic preservation work, had a lot of existing inventory to preserve.
right.
And we don't. So you have this mix between whether new would be better in this location, whether preservation would be better in this. But I would suggest that sort of time or track in getting that to then get the council on board if that's this commission's desire. And then, as Hillary said, the comp plan draft, I think, is already ready to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission in September. But there are policies that talk about this kind of stuff. So adding this later when we've had that full discussion, I think would be fine. I don't think there'd be any type of conflict with that. But I would suggest that kind of timeline and discussion points so they fully understand what does that mean, and is that a thing the council would support or like. You know, I don't know the answer to that. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So, Ms. Blackstone, we'll just set up a meeting sometime next month. We've got a number of items that you and I need to discuss. We'll include that item on our discussion, and then if we can get on the agenda for Business Association August meeting, talk to them.
I will follow up with them. I think that this makes sense as a general meeting topic, but they might prefer that it be before their board first, a smaller group of people.
Okay,
So I will follow up. I'll try to have that information before we meet so we can plan for it.
okay, that works. Thank you. We will go on to reports. Ada County Historic Preservation Council recent agendas minutes.
This is really just included in your packet so that you can reference it as you'd like. It's just information for you guys. So I don't need to necessarily cover it unless Blaine or another commissioner felt that there was something that you wanted to highlight in some way.
Mr. President,
Ms. Neri.
is this one of the, I know we talked about developing kind of a committee as far as relations with outer groups. Is this a group that, I mean, I think it's public, right? We theoretically could be attending these meetings?
Correct.
Okay.
It's at a very inconvenient time for many that don't work in the city of Boise. It might be more convenient for you since you're down there, but noon on a Tuesday is kind of rough for a lot of people.
Yep, okay.
And I have made it to one. I'm thinking March or April I went to it. And yeah, they're open for the public, just like we are, to come in and talk. But since you are members of this commission, you can't go and vote, but they'll ask for your opinions or whatever, so. And lunch is provided.
It's good to see Frank's name on this.
Um,
Was it on the agenda or on the minutes?
On the
minutes, I gave him Frank's name.
Frank Thompson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Where was he?
Go up. Making History Award.
I think, yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Awesome.
Guys, we didn't have a phone number, so I had to get hold of Hillary, and she got a hold of Lila.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I did talk to Frank, and it sounds like he's doing well. He appreciated being thought of by you guys, too. So, he seems like he's good.
Good.
I like that.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name.
So yeah, these are just, I'm going to keep on including these as I have them. You'll
Yeah.
notice these are a little old too, but they kind of operate the same way. They don't have their approved minutes until a month later. So you'll be a bit lagging as far as the minutes goes, but the agendas should be more recent. If any of you want to be added individually to the Ada County Historic Preservation Council agendas as they're released, go ahead and if you want to let me know, or if you want to just email Brent, he could add you. Right now, it just goes to Blaine and I believe. But yeah, if you want to see the agendas as he sends them out, I'm sure he'd add you too.
Can you put me on that? Only because I'm down there if there was ever anything that we saw. Not far from being able to just go over there.
Okay, 8B.
This is another just FYI. So this PowerPoint has been shared at the last Idaho Heritage Conference, and then it was shared again, I think it was during one of the camp breakouts or something, but I wasn't sure if you guys had received this yet. So again, it's just a reference piece. It goes along with the speech that he has. We don't have the notes for that speech or that narrative, but it's kind of fun. And it's still insightful. It basically helps lay a framework for the economic impact of historic preservation and heritage tourism. Talks about main streets quite a bit. We don't have a Main Street association currently, but that's something that HPC might want to consider advocating for at the sunset of the urban renewal district. just to help pick up some of the topics that might be dropped. They sunset. That's like 2026 though, a ways out. So yeah, this is for your own time, your own knowledge, whenever. And clearly we don't have all of the details, but I wanted to still get it in front of you to share it with you.
Item C, open space, historic preservation, and cultural heritage.
This is a new one. So this is a city strategic plan item that lives, I believe, in the Parks Department, as far as the primary department responsible for it. But they wanted to have a meeting with some other stakeholders from you guys and from planning that might want to have a say. So it's something that they haven't really made a lot of headway on, if any headway on. And I think I'd sent out an email and asked who would be interested, and Jody said she would help serve as a stakeholder on that planning group. They have not met yet.
Mr. President, their first meeting is next week.
Okay.
So
More of an update in August. But again, it's good to be included on the groups talking about these things. This is Jody too.
Mr. President, I have spent not as many hours as I would like to, but a few, down in the basement, going through the collections, itemizing them, even down to putting the names of the signatures in there so that if somebody wanted to research, they could find every piece that had come through. One of the interesting things is there was a newspaper article that stated that the Masonic Hall was started in 1955 and dedicated in 1957. So that gives us at least a date to begin with it. And I would imagine that article has the people involved at that time too. But there is at least a reference down there.
Okay.
So I have 2 cabinets finished. One of them is the village records, and the second is Mr. Cox's scrapbooks. They've all been preserved and noted.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
I know you spent a lot of time down there, so it's appreciated.
Sorry, Mr. President. While we're having that conversation, and again, this is something that we seem to constantly cycle around, now that the work is being done on actually cataloging those items, we might need to remind ourselves of who owns those items in a post-history center in the City Hall world. Did we decide all of it's going to shift to the library and they'll take it?
That's still under discussion.
Okay.
We just had a meeting like a week and a half ago, and what they'd like to have, what the library'd like to have, is be able to have some of the items that are down there on a rotating and have them at the library. And then, but we would store everything there until we found a proper place for all of it.
Cool.
So, but that's, Gretchen's working with the city on that, and so we'll see what comes with it.
Still in conversation.
Still in conversation.
But that's what Gretchen would like to do, because she said we are the collection place, for people in the community, and so.
Hillary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think eventually the ownership of everything will go to the library.
The current discussion was that other than city-specific documents, I think
Right.
the preference would be to keep the collection as together as possible so that the ownership would fall under the library, or possibly even just continue to be under the Historical Society, but then it's a more informal group that's kind of housed under like Friends of the Library or something. But they could live here because the library doesn't have the same space that we have. So our biggest asset from the city side is that the basement doesn't seem to be a threatened
Right.
area right now. it's more of the history center up here that's kind of being pushed out or being looked at as a potential space for another city department or something. I think the goal of a lot of the stakeholders that had met would be to keep the collection owned by one entity as much as possible. But there might be some things that the library, for instance, might not want to take ownership of. I don't think we've gone through, item by item to really decide where they want to draw the line.
We don't want the horse.
Yeah, there are some large artifacts that they might, I think the library's most apparent interest would be in things that people might be looking to look up in a catalog or reference or whatever, and it's likely not going to be a typewriter.
People or Things like that.
Yeah, so,
I think there are still some items in the History Center that are just on loan. So we do need to get with Lila to verify which items those are, so that when and if that happens, it goes back to the rightful owner.
And Mr. President, yeah, that has been a lengthy discussion on trying to determine what is loaned, what is not wanted to be returned, how do we verify any of that? Hillary's right. I mean, some of those items in there are easy to display in a small display area, things like the sweaters and the photos and some of the smaller items. The scale, the horse, the loom, those are a little bit difficult to move or display very readily. So, but the city has, at least at this point, said, the storage room that has been built in the basement is not needed in the immediate future for city needs. So maintaining that for at least the collection and for storage is fine. And the window of when the History Center might be needed is still at least a couple years away. So there's time, but we have been trying to work diligently to kind of keep on track that this needs to transfer. The Historical Society needs to let go, let this maybe a different group take over, not the library itself, but a different nonprofit.
Thank you.
Item E, drafted comprehensive plan input needed.
so if you click this link, you guys can give feedback through the preferred channels, going through the drafted comprehensive plan. So you can review the full draft here. We'll take you through everything. Oh, it does it as a PDF. But it's large, 106 pages. So there is some information that they've broken out, like the future land use map. It's its own link to click. They have an interactive map as well. And once you've read through the drafted plan, you can take a survey to give your feedback on how the chapters read, and you can skip sections that you don't have comments on. So the bulk of your guys' stuff is in chapter 5, I believe. Please read through everything, because there are, as we took note when Pete Larange came and spoke to us, there was stuff that he highlighted in every single component of the comprehensive plan, every chapter of the comprehensive plan, that HPC could inform or could possibly address in some way. So if you have the time, if you can make the time, I would appreciate if you guys would read through. There are some formatting issues that they will likely update. So you don't need to comment on, where paragraphs are split or something like that. But the biggest thing for me, for you guys to look at, would be the policies themselves. There's a lot of introduction. Oh, I'm in the introduction. So even, you have to sign in. I'm sorry, I forgot about that, because they want to track, and so people aren't just submitting the same comments again and again. But essentially, I think these go by chapter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can, again, review the whole thing as a PDF. That went. Chapter 5, Vibrant Community Historic Preservation. So your key stuff is in the policies here, but the other policies will or may relate to you as well.
Is this available in a printed version?
I could print you a copy. Sure. I don't think the survey you'd still have to take online, but that way you could read this as printed. Yeah.
And Mr. President, I think they were looking for feedback by August 5th, what I heard. Did I miss that? Oh, fair enough.
Was short, yes. What was it? Seems right to me.
Yep.
So you could do it this weekend. Or next weekend.
Should make the communications manager change on this website.
Oh, boy. Good note.
I know, I just was thinking as a member of the public, if I had a question, I would call and talk to her probably, but she would not answer the phone.
Probably not.
We'll update that. Casey is still listed on this plan, I believe, as well, because she was here for the bulk of the beginning part of it, but they should probably include Shandy also. You know, the part where they list all the people.
Not that matters for the purpose of content, it's just if we were to have a question, we can't get a hold of her.
Great call. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, 2019 Preservation Month. So what do everybody think of Preservation Month? How do things go? We do better? We can always do better.
I thought it went well. I don't know that we need two tour groups, because our group was kind of small. Not that that was terrible, but I don't know that we have enough people to split groups, at least this year. But it was fun.
I think our group was fairly large.
It was.
We had 12, I think, in the second group that went through. So,
We had two, and they weren't really there for the tour, but they just came along.
but it was, everybody enjoyed it. The homes they went through, of course, the nurse house was crowded.
You think?
I'm just trying to be polite.
He's always very generous.
Yeah, but yeah, he was there. He answered questions. He had a display out front of stuff. So he spent a lot of time getting ready for us. So I think it was well received by those who attended. So again, I think work on marketing, get more people involved. I know a year ago we had probably a few more people, but everybody that attends has a good time. So I think overall we had a good event.
Yeah, I only heard positive comments, people were interested, and so, we just have to up our game and get the word out better.
I got the table. How did, like the calendars and that kind of stuff, how'd we do there?
Well, so the calendars, the remaining calendars, we actually only had 7 left, so they went exactly to just the council members and mayor. Luke Kavanagh did want to share with you guys that if done again, he'd like to find a more economical way to do it or to ask for donations, etc. He said it was an expensive gift to give to people as incentive to come out. And I said, this was a pilot thing. There's of course things we want to change and do for future issues or prints or whatever. And he also said working with a local person is what he would prefer over Walgreens. And I said the matter was time and,
And
thank
they
you
were
for
less
the
expensive.
feedback. Yeah. So I
It
said
is what it is.
I said I would share that with you so that you would know his feedback. And then he also said that, which I think was your guys' intent, was that he just planned to donate to the Historical Society however much the calendars cost. That was his original, how much did it cost? I'll just donate that to the Historical Society. So, he said, including that little slip in there that told people about the Historical Society and asked for donations to help them fund their stuff was nice. So he liked that touch. And I think, if you guys printed, I think part of it was just because of the limited amount of prints. So if we printed 200 of them, it would obviously be cheaper per calendar as well. So we can cross that bridge again when we get closer to printing calendars. I know that Shandy liked the calendar idea a lot, and she just wanted to make a whole city calendar and include dates for events and all this stuff. Including dates for events seems kind of scary to me because if it changed, you can't change it on a calendar that someone already has in their house. But she likes the idea, so if you guys want to do it again, I'll try to keep her in the loop, and then potentially there's some other way we can get joint funding or partner with someone else or do an arts and history calendar or something to that effect so that you can help partner with other city groups also. The tent went pretty well. I'd say most people were interested in getting a calendar, although it was nice kind of that they weren't expecting it. Because it wasn't just people showing up, getting their calendar, and then going. It was people that were there for a tour and then also got a bonus of a calendar. People always like looking at the maps, so I think that goes over pretty well. But I'd also say that the number of maps that we had there was probably sufficient, since there wasn't a ton of time to just sit there and linger. It was like the people that were meeting there got to look at it before their tour started, and the people afterwards were like, oh, cool, maps, and then they walked away because they were kind of done with the tour. So yeah, I'd say overall positive. If they weren't there, people might not miss them either, but I think they like to look at them when they have downtime, especially before a tour starts. I like the idea in theory of having 2 tours, but it just doesn't, it's harder to communicate that. So if you guys did want to try to break things up, I think there had been feedback from like Something Special Antiques where they felt like everybody was going to Richard's house and nobody was going to their property. So if you did want to have something where you feature a different property one night a week all month, that might be another option if you were really trying to build a partnership with a particular property. Richard, however, really likes the attention and he likes that people care about his property because sometimes just on the walking tour, just because it's across the street, people won't cross over Second also. They'll just look at it and be like, oh, there it is. And they'll be, on the west side of 2nd Street, and then they'll just cross over Pine or State and go look at the Tolith House or whatever. So I know that's a nice feature for him, and he'd like to continue to be involved. He always comes back with feedback. He also may need more help as far as volunteers next year because he did have artifacts out. So he said, if I do that again, I'd like for there to be another person that would stand by the artifacts. One person standing at the door, which is what Shelley did this year, and then one person that could help walk people through, which he would like to be him. Because this year he ended up just standing by the artifacts and like telling people to go through, but then you miss a lot of his knowledge, which is really the key part of going through his house, because you're like, why do you have 20,000 of this? And he can tell you why or what the reason is behind it. So that makes people care more, right? They care about the story. He also said he doesn't have to do the artifacts in the front yard, so if we can't do more volunteers, that he just wouldn't pull them out.
I thought the artifacts went well because then we could limit the amount of people that went through the house at one time. They could stay up front, look at that as a few people went through, and then as they funnel through, then they could come out, we get more people through. So I thought that made it a little bit easier for that portion of the tour. So, but yeah, we can plan on having someone there just to help. So,
And I think too, if we didn't do the 2 tours, that might help let somebody just stay stationed at Richard's house. So just food for thought for next year.
Does the city still have people that give tours in City Hall?
Only during the school year for 3rd grade classes.
Maybe we could reach out to them for extra help if we need it.
Yes, yeah, we could.
any further discussion, comments? Okay, we will go on to current applications as soon as Hillary's done.
Sorry, it references this. Wagner Farms photos were completed. Those were slightly more than $50. I think they were $75 because he took some internal shots of some of those stands also. I added those to that Dropbox folder as well. Donna, I need to add you to the Dropbox folder so you can see those things. Millbrae subdivision was the other one that we had kind of talked about. But Blaine had driven by that and said there wasn't really anything
No.
of significance to take photos of. So if you want to see that application, you're still welcome to. And then the other thing that the agenda references is past projects follow-up. And it links to this tracking sheet PDF that I had made. So there were some places, like this one, there was a fire at the property and he asked if he could donate photos. So we had met, we talked about donating photos, and then you guys preferenced to have them donated to the Historical Society rather than to you. So I called them back and let them know that, but then there was nothing done after then. Some of the properties are rented by other people, and then others have just said no pictures, and then a lot of them are done, which is great. These ones, I believe, are actually done. This was your same PDF that was from June. So I can add some other updates, but these were essentially the properties that you had discussed before. And I wanted to add, we don't have to only discuss the current application properties. If you guys see another property that you think is worth taking photos of, let Blaine know and we can get it added to the agenda so it doesn't have to necessarily fall under current applications, but we can make it as another agenda item for you guys to consider.
Any questions? Okay, with that, next meeting is Thursday, August 22nd, 4:30 here in council chambers, so. Motion to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Motion by Commissioner Neri, second by Commissioner Alt for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Let me try to print that. Let me try to print that for you really fast. Do you have a moment?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that.
How much? 35.